We're kicking around William Nylander and the contract that hasn't been signed yet. And I wonder, I mean, it seems to me that they have the parameters of what the number is going to be. Is it possible that they're looking at term everyone seems to be not worried that this thing is going to get done before the season starts? It has to be. He's not going to play.
So
he has to have a contract.
Okay. I didn't get what you're asking.
Because when we're comparing it to Larkin, right?
Okay,
no,
bring
that
the
was
Larkin
6
comparison
years.
again.
So,
yeah.
So are we looking at a longer term? We're looking at 7. We're looking at 8. I don't know what would be holding it up if you have the parameters of the numbers per year. So what's holding it?
I think there's an element of Nylander that wants to probably bet on himself a little more than what Dylan Larkin just did. I'd want to go almost shorter than the 5 years if you're gonna stick me with $6 million. And this speaks to where Leaf fans were a year ago at this time, coming off a brilliant rookie season by Matthews. Marner gave you a great showing in his first year. We weren't sure. Nobody was sure Marner would play that well. Everybody had no doubts about Matt. Remember, there was even talk. Like, he's probably accomplished all there is to accomplish in London. So he's not going to go back to junior. He's the best junior player on the planet almost, in the CHL at least. But almost the best situation for Mitch Marner, and people have to remember this, at the start of 17-18, almost might have been to play with the Toronto Marlies. Or at the start of 16-17, I should say. So he proved himself. Nylander proved himself. But everybody's stressed. Matthews is going to get 11. And Marner's going to get 8. And Nylander's going to get 7.5 or 8. And then you see Dylan Larkin check in at 6. Barely over 6. Good. Like, that's great. I don't care if William Nylander is quote unquote disgruntled. And I'm using that to say I'd be a little bit, if the Leafs offer was 6 and I'm William Nylander, I'm laughing at that. I want to work that a lot closer to David Pasternak's $6.7 million. But the stress points that people had about how are you going to afford all 3 and keep Morgan Riley and do this and add John Tavares into the mix seems to be really ill-founded. He's probably coming in at probably more than Larkin and less than Pasternak. And I don't know that the Leafs can hardline this any lower than $6 million. But I'm telling you, if I'm Nylander, I don't want to sign for more than 3 years. I know that sounds like it's, of course, guys are going to take all the term they can, so we think. Ryan Ellis, we just had on this weekend, he signed for 8. But if I'm William Nylander, that takes me to where I'm 25. I should be in the absolute prime of my career. And I don't want to sign for 8 years at $6 million. I'll tell you that.
If I'm Nylander in his camp, he's a guy that he's played center in the NHL. And we know center icemen make more money than wingers in the league because of the position. Now, he's not going to play center on this team anymore.
No chance.
There's no chance for him to play center. Does his camp go, hey, we're going to play the wing here. You're going to play with Matthews. You got to pay us like a center because he doesn't have the opportunity to grow and be a center on this team. We want to stay here, play with Austin, but he's not playing center, and that was something maybe we thought he would be, and then we need to maximize him being on the wing opposed to playing center.
It's possible that if your side says that you are now going to go head-to-head because they're going to tell you if we thought he was a center, we would have played him there. If we thought he was a center, we may not have had to go out and get John Tavares. We see him as a winger. That's where he's best, and we're going to pay him as such, and you got a problem on your hands.
Like, I think a year ago, and I even think when we talked about early in the fall, people were like, Tavares is going to come around. I guess it's too bad we don't need him. We got to concentrate on defense. And then it got closer to March, and you're like, oh, well, the Islanders probably aren't going to keep him, and they're not going to deal him. Something's up with this. And obviously the Leafs are going to be suitors in this deal per se. The struggle also with Pasternak is if it's a tough comparable to compare the Pasternak deal because he signed it a year ago. He just had an 80-point season and a 20-point playoff in 12 games. I mean, I don't need to remind Leaf fans how good he was. If he's signing now, he's getting a lot closer to $8 million than he is $6.7 million. But William Nylander doesn't have that in his back pocket. You got to. If David Pasternak had it all to do over again, he's bridging that deal, and he's coming around again in a couple years. But he took the term, and I get why guys will always take the term. Think about it in your own lives. Like anybody listening in their careers, of course you'd like quote unquote guaranteed money. But what if that guaranteed money leaves you feeling like you're either A, underutilized or B, underpaid for your utilization?
Welcome to Max Pacioretty and the contract that he took with the Montreal Canadiens.
Maybe,
and he has felt that way in being one of the top scorers in the National Hockey League. But you have to weigh what you're being offered at the time in comparison to what other players are doing who are similar to yourself, and being able to sign a contract that's going to make sure that you make money for the
Nazem
next 2 years.
Kadri's a freaking bargain at 5.3. Right. If he's a UFA either of the last 2 years, someone's giving him 42.
That's a lot for a third-line center, don't you think?
But he's in the third-line center on a lot of other teams, right? He's walking right into Calgary, right into Vancouver, right into a lot of places, and he's playing top 6 minutes.
Greg, you talk about how if you're William Nylander, you take a shorter deal, a 3-year deal, but are the Maple Leafs willing to pay him a lot more for an 8-year deal to buy up some of those UFA years? Are Kyle Dubas, is he willing to do that? Because we know the infamous podcast quote now with Jeff and Elliott. My plan is to keep all 3, and that's what we're going to do.
And we will,
here.
right? We can and we will.
Yeah, how are you going to pay out the other ones so your defensemen come due? That's where you're going to end up getting caught.
And you got a $5 million goalie right now, and you may not always have a $5 million goalie. You may need to upgrade.
And you talk about those deals, the Larkin and Pasternak deal. If I'm Nylander, then what? Is he going to sign for an 8-year deal worth $48 million?
God, I wouldn't touch that if I'm him. No way.
That's right.
No, but how
so
disappointed?
Then what's the number?
I understand, but how disappointed would you be considering the numbers that you have to fit over the next couple of years? Seeing whatever happens with Nylander, he's not guaranteed going to be a guy who's going to exceed the $6 million that you're going to pay him. He may just be that player, and if it's 3 years, then 3 years is okay. I mean, you have a lot of numbers that are coming due over the next couple of years. If you settle him in, because how big is your window? Your window is not 10 years here to win a Stanley Cup. Your window is the next who knows how many, but it's not long. And so if you settle this guy in for 3 years, I will worry about the 4th year when it comes.
Are you sure the window's not long?
How big? How long?
5-6 years?
Okay.
I would say for them to win a championship.
So I would too. I think everything else is an interchangeable part. I think and you may have a better chance after the Patrick Marleau deal's done, because that's going to eat up. I know people didn't like it. You had to do it, and if the 3rd year is what got him to Toronto and got him out of Northern California, you had to give it to him. And I know people stressed at the time of the deal, I don't like that 3rd year. Yeah, fine, but enjoy the first 2 first. And we will. And we're just coming into his 2nd year. But I understand people saying at age 40 and a half, the 3rd year might not look all that attractive.
What do you guys think? And I know we're talking about William Nylander, but this affects what the Leafs are potentially going to do with Jake Gardiner too, because he's a guy heading into unrestricted free agency. And do the Leafs want to keep him? And does William Nylander's contract, does that have anything to do with the Jake Gardner's going to trade too? Because William Nylander's a valuable piece. He's in your top 6, but Jake Gardner's also your 2nd best blue liner, a guy, and we know Jake is what he is at this point of his career. He's a guy who makes some boneheaded mistakes, but he still skates like the wind, makes an incredible first pass. The Leafs blue line can't afford not to have Jake Gardner here long term.
Tavares was a gigantic Christmas present on December 25th, on July 1st, because you lost JVR. If they lost JVR and Tavares goes elsewhere, their offense is worse coming into this year. It's worse than it was last year. If you lose Jay Gardner and you don't replace him with a similar player, your blue line, I know that they're hoping that Travis Dermott is something and that Liljegren's playing by then, but you're asking a lot. And remember how none of us feel the Zaitsev deal was Lou Lamoriello's best moment. They gave him 7 years, and I know he went through a lot of turmoil, but he probably is what he is also. He's turning 27 this year. I want to bring this up. Larkin played, we get back to Dylan Larkin, $30.5 million for 5 years. He played almost 20 minutes of hockey last year, admittedly on a worse team. William Nylander barely played 16. He's playing a lot more minutes a night, and their productivity is really similar. You give William Nylander 20 minutes a night, his argument would be, Elliot and George, he's going to get a lot more than 61 points. His points per 60 minutes of even strength play, way higher than Dylan Larkin.
You can't even get Matthews to 20 minutes.
And they can't get right. I know.
He's not even on the number one.
And
how
much ice time's John Tavares going to get? I'll tell you what, he's not getting as much as he got on the island when he's got to carry everybody.
But don't you think? I mean, I know you're saying, well, we're hoping that Liljegren will be, that they're more than hoping. They're banking that this is where they drafted him, what they saw in him, and the progression that he's eventually going to stand. And hockey is different than the other sports, man. When you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Doesn't matter what your age is. That Liljegren's going to be there when they need him to fill a spot, and that Dermott is going to be better as the seasons go on, and you're going to be able to shed, because there's going to be too much You're not going to be able to pay everybody eventually. Yeah, you can fit in your forwards, but you will get caught on the defense.
Yeah, and what I think is just silly is the whole like, hey, we don't have to worry about the blue line. Look what the Penguins did. That's not a prototype. That's not some kind of blueprint. The blueprints, how about the 12 years of evidence before that, where you have to have Keith and Seabrook and Hjalmarsson, or you have to have a Chara, or you have to have Drew Doughty anchoring a blue line and playing 28 minutes a night. What about those teams? What about that's the one thing Vancouver was missing. As good as their run was for those couple seasons, I'm sorry, you can't have Kevin Bieksa or Dan Hamhuis be your best defenseman. I love those players. I love those Canucks teams. I know, but those guys can't be your best players.
I know that you weren't high on them last year, and you're not high on them this year. But Vegas did make it to the Stanley Cup final with a no-name defense. I mean,
I don't know how the hell it happened, but you're right.
They did it. So first it's the Pittsburgh Penguins back-to-back, and then you have another team reach the Stanley Cup final with it. So I don't know if it starts becoming a something.
And do they have a much, much better goaltender with a long, long history of playoff acumen and success than the Maple Leafs do? Yes.
Better get one of those.
Well, and who's almost a decade older, and he's better.
And on that theme of the blue line, the Capitals, obviously John Carlson was terrific, but that Niskanen and Orlov pair was their shutdown pair, and that was the glue to their run, too, not to mention how strong they were down the middle. But how do the Leafs move forward without Jake Gardiner? Where do they find that guy? Can they afford that? Because the Capitals had Braden Holtby back there, and you talk about playoff acumen. Lot more than Freddie Anderson. And if Jake Gardner's going to lead this team, you got to lean more on Freddie Anderson. And I get the strength down the middle and the offensive punch, but come playoff time, that can be a problem.
Well, I should point out, Fleury's only 34. I said he's a decade older than Freddie Anderson. It felt that way, the way nobody wanted him when he was leaving Pittsburgh, and Vegas got him for a song and dance. I get to bring it all back to Nylander. I'm not taking their term. I want to bet on myself, and I want to take a shorter amount of time because I think I'm a horse that's being restrained a little bit in the barn by playing 16 minutes, not always getting the power play time I need. And I'm going to show them this year, I hope so, in the time that I can score 80 points.
But if you don't get that time, then you're not going to put up the numbers, and your 3-year contract is not going to turn into big money.
If they sign the 6-year deal, it's $6 million and come to camp, I'm not doing it.
It's
my life.
We also know that Matthews,
Billy Joel, man.
Matthews and Marner also apparently talking extension.
Big shot.
Why would those guys re-up now with the Leafs? If I'm Mitch Marner and I'm looking at the prospects of playing with John Tavares,
because you love your teammates and you see your team winning a
Leaf
Stanley
fans want to
Cup.
believe that.
Right.
They want to believe that. But if I'm Mitch Marner,
they sing Bon Jovi songs together, George. We cannot break that up. And if I'm Austin Matthews, I played 56 games.
Yeah,
I want to play 82 and score 98 points.